You are now unmuted.
Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us online for day 4 of our 2-week engineering conclave, Rethinking Engineering Futures. We have two thought-provoking keynotes lined up for this evening, exploring educational reform and the role of engineering education in the interconnected global world. Our first keynote speaker for day 4 is Dr. Donna Hedgepath, President of Wayland Baptist University, USA. She is a distinguished leader in higher education with lifelong commitment in teaching and academic excellence. A Kentucky native, she began her career in public schools as a music educator, later joining Campbellsville University, where she served as a professor, associate dean, and eventually dean of the School of Education. She earned her PhD in music education from the University of Kentucky with research focusing on teacher quality. Her remarkable journey includes leadership as provost and vice president for academic affairs at Campbellsville University, where she guided the institution through historic growth, the launch of numerous programs, and a new doctoral offering. She has been honored with awards such as the Kentucky Music Educators Association College or University Teacher of the Year and the Algernon Sidney Sullivan Award. Currently, as president of Wayland Baptist University, she is dedicated to building bridges for effective learning environments and advancing the mission of creating servant leaders. Today, she will share her insights on engineering the future, AUS perspective on educational reform and global relevance. Ma'am, over to you.
You are now muted.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction and welcome those who are joining us here tonight in India in Plainview, Texas. It is 6:30 a.m. in the morning, so it is an early morning here for me in the U.S., but it's a beautiful day as usual here in Texas. Again, my name is Donna Hedgepath, and a little bit about my background before I get started, because you may be wondering why she's speaking at a conclave for engineering and technology education. So I want to set a little bit of context before I share my thoughts about some educational reform and global relevance this morning. But my bachelor's degree is actually in music. So I am a trained musician, and I taught music to middle and high school students for several years when I first started teaching. My master's degree is in music education. So I started my PhD at the University of Kentucky, and I have a PhD in education where I started to study and really analyze quality teaching. So that's where I started to look at all areas of teaching and not just in the arts or the humanities. I'm also a certified gifted and talented educator. So I have a lot of experience working with precocious young people and those who are gifted and oftentimes in the area of technology. So it's, again, an honor to share my journey and my thoughts moving forward. I also have had opportunities to spend time in India. Just came back from my 5th visit this summer, but it's always just fun, enjoyable, and it's just a beautiful place to be and to visit. I have wonderful colleagues, potential partners that I'm working with several schools over there. As we actually are going to talk about how partnering is essential to our education reform, especially here in the U.S. But I actually specifically got to visit Stanley University School of Engineering and Technology for Women, and I got to see their projects and talk to some really strong, intelligent young women while I was there in Hyderabad. And if any of you are watching or whatever, I'd like to say hello to you all and to the administration there at Stanley University. So once again, I am honored to share with you today along with my own perspective on educational reform and global relevance. Education and educator preparation is my passion, so I've been teaching teachers how to teach for many years. Not only did I love being a product of the U.S. educational system as a child, I also loved my years teaching, especially younger students and then later college students. Those experiences led me to higher education and a teacher preparation. I think the best part of being part of the education system in the U.S. for so many years is that education changes constantly. It is cyclical, yet traditional. It's technical, yet relational. But most of all, I believe, it's endless. As a professional, I would hope that we are all committed to lifelong learning. So education reform touches us all, which is probably why you are here today and participating in the conclave for these few weeks. All right. Just a second. All right. All right. I'm trying to move. Hang on just a second. Here we go. You can see the slide.
You are now unmuted.
I wanted to show you in context where I am exactly geographically. As I mentioned earlier, I currently serve as president of Wayland Baptist University in Plainview, Texas. And I previously served as provost and vice president of academic affairs in Campbellsville University in Campbellsville, Kentucky. So I was born and raised in the state of Kentucky. So the move to West Texas has been quite an adjustment. Wayland is equidistant, as you can see, between two large public universities. If you look down here at the slide on the left, between Amarillo and Lubbock. Texas Tech University is in Lubbock, and West Texas A&M is outside Amarillo, Texas. So here, engineering is king. It's king in Texas. While Wayland does not have a full degree program in engineering, we partner with Texas Tech by creating a pathway or several pathways from Wayland undergraduate studies into the Texas Tech graduate programs. The greater Permian Basin in this part of the state of Texas is rich in oil wells. It's actually the largest producing oil field in the U.S., along with wind energy and cotton farms and other types of agriculture. And we also have a very strong population of Hispanic families, not too far from the Mexican border. We are rich in diversity here, and we are proud to be so. All right, looking at U.S. education, I wanted to speak a little bit about its history and our status quo here in the U.S. and mentioning just briefly about what comes before our college experience, which we call post-secondary education. But early childhood is something that is not required in the U.S. This is pre-kindergarten. For many of you, that's age, 3 and 4-year-olds. I know in many countries it is required by law for students to begin school as early as 3. In the United States, You just have to be age 5, and at that point, you do start kindergarten. Now, many of our people here start their children in pre-K. It's often private, or you have to qualify as a low-income family, and you can join our Head Start program. So you start in kindergarten at age 5. You graduate your last year in high school, grade 12. You're usually 17 or 18 years old. And so from that, I would say that our educational system is very traditional, still somewhat, I would say, stuck in traditional approaches from the past. I think we have a lot of work to do here, because my next point with post-secondary experiences, now this is once the students leave the public school system and they are finished with high school, and they start college. Many do, not everyone does, but I believe there's a mismatch between our classroom instruction and real world application. Our current education system often lags, as you can see, in producing graduates who are adequately prepared for the rapid changes in science, engineering, and technology, or STEM. And, I really believe it depends, because if you are attending a school with a really rich tax base, because our schools are run by our taxed income, you'll have students who have the latest in technology and experiences in the classroom. So when they start college, they are well prepared. They can write well. Basic skills in mathematics are strong, and communication. But oftentimes, if you're from a rural area that doesn't have quite a strong tax base, you will find students who will come to college and will struggle and not have experience with the latest technology. I would say most of our students would come equipped with a cell phone, but that's, of course, just scratching the surface of what they ultimately will need to know. So just keep that in mind as we talk about the U.S. effect on reform and education. As great as I believe our education system has been, and the potential for the future, I don't think we're the cutting edge example in the world yet. We learn so much from our global partners. So next we look at trends with traditional college freshmen and their expectations. So I'm going to go ahead and mention that, and the proverbial demographic cliff. And if you can see the picture of the person on the cliff here, and I say proverbial because the demographic cliff has been a topic of conversation for several years in higher education. And that basically means it's a popular discussion about our enrollment of students in college is going to have a drastic decline with our 18 to 22-year-old students. They actually say that this demographic cliff is going to be felt starting in the fall of 2026. That's related to a decline in high school graduates, and it's not because they're dropping out. It's because our population has changed. So we have fewer students in the population funnel that are actually coming through our public systems. So that means our undergraduates who leave home and start college at age 18 or 19, it's just going to be drastically reduced. Personally, from Campbellsville and now to Wayland, I'm not feeling it too bad yet, but I can see that influence. But I also think there's a lot more that's at play here that we're working to overcome. So I'm not sitting around worrying every day about this demographic cliff. We're just continuing on and doing our best to recruit and be prepared for the students when they do leave high school. So next, looking at the global and the international influences. And what does this mean? What does this look like? And I don't know if you're seeing the rest of my slide, but I'll read these to you. I mentioned bridging academia and industries. Are they willing to partner? And then I'll come back to these. The next one, reforms must emphasize global awareness. And under that, I have listed cross-cultural communication, international partnerships, foster shared innovation. So back to bridging academia and industries. This is actually a trend that I've been working with for a few years, and it's so important. And I sincerely believe that if higher education institutions and universities aren't willing to partner with industries, that they will suffer, because this is how the world is moving. We mentioned our students leaving high school and coming to college, but I tell you, there's a larger group that's even looking at options outside of attending college. In the U.S., we are in dire need of skilled trades. We need electricians and plumbers and those who work on heating and cooling and HVAC systems. And so we're seeing a move into that profession. It's actually it's a pretty good way to make a living, because they're so in demand. They find that that's a good way to make a good salary without going to a 4-year college. Now, they do have to go through training and certificate programs, or working as an apprentice, but that is something that if universities learn how to, maybe, for example, if an industry or a corporation is wanting welders, how can we use that welding certificate and apply it to a business degree, a type of management degree, to where they can run a business. But you can also look at other types of industries where you may have, because we're talking about engineering these few weeks and technology. You can also start your technology experience, at least you can in the U.S., without a degree, if you just have the experience and just talent in that area. And so by offering to these companies to help educate their employees who have great skill, but maybe not the best soft skills or management skills, to where we can work together to bridge that. It's the same what we're seeing with our international students. I've had a lot of experience in the U.S. with especially graduate students coming from India in particular, other countries in Asia, and some in Europe, who they bring their undergrad degree from their country, and they secure a job with maybe an IT firm, corporation here in the U.S., and they come here to work. They have an I-20 type visa, and so they can work and stay in the U.S. as long as they are in a graduate program that is related to their work. So that is something that I have championed for several years, and working with students who are looking for options to study and work, but it has to relate to what they're doing. Not every university has jumped on to this. So I think I'm seeing more of it, and seeing how important it is to bridge that space between universities and our job markets. And this goes also to relate to reforms and about emphasizing global awareness. And I just mentioned that. A lot of what's happening in innovations, as far as, I mentioned a lot of my visits to India, There's so much happening in India that the U.S. is learning from or needs to. And that's why I'm interested in those partnerships with our friends in India and in the universities, and especially in technology and engineering. So I think it is imperative that this piece is something that we're talking about as we move forward. Many have shared that leadership in higher education is at its most challenging time today. And I believe that to some extent, but I tend to think a little differently. I believe that we are on the cusp of the most exciting times for education. And a lot of it's due to the change and to the challenge. Impacting educational experiences is happening from birth to old age. Go back to lifelong learning, as I mentioned earlier. In order to survive and to work and to learn, until the later in life, it is so important to know what's happening in the world and continue to learn. All right. Okay, looking at education reform in the U.S. and what are we seeing exactly? With STEM education in particular, which is, just to review, is our science, technology, engineering, and math. To engineer the future, we must reimagine our STEM, and not as a niche path that only a few consider. Because in the U.S., STEM is probably, it's important and many pursue it, but it's not the most pursued path. But as a core foundation for all learning, and I believe STEM needs to become a core. This means moving beyond the rote memorization and standardized testing, and instead nurturing critical thinking, interdisciplinary collaboration, and design-based problem solving. So that mismatched section that I brought to your attention in my previous slide, from our 18-year-olds to starting college, is where I think the key is to changing this, because again, they're leaving that high school experience with limited exposure to high quality technology experiences. I thought this was interesting. The Lumina Foundation is a U.S. foundation that does rich research and provides a lot of data for education in the U.S. If you have a chance to check it out. But they were saying in one of their recent publications that by 2040, the Lumina Foundation predicts that 75% of adults in the U.S. labor force will have college degrees or other credentials. And I put question mark after the other credentials, because that is the question mark. If by 2040, 75% are trained or educated beyond high school, what does that look like? And I think we have to answer that question in order to engage in any type of reform. So now we'll take, for example, in the state of Kentucky, where I grew up and I went to high school and college. And the Kentucky education system is ranked really low in the U.S. In regard to the 50 states. And probably, I think there's less than 50% of Kentuckians have gone to college. In Texas, that's much higher, as you can probably imagine. So again, it's relevant to the location, of course, but according to the Lumina data, the average for the entire country, 75%, that's really high. And so that is the direction we're going. and how our universities preparing for that is important. So if, again, we look at our skilled laborers, the stable type of skills that are needed, how are they trained, and how can universities get on board to do more of a broader educational experiences with their skills. Something that I'm interested in and have actually begun some work on. And I believe it's important that we become transfer friendly and that we are receiving the credits as well as experiential credit for any type of work experience or other type of certificates that you may have gained in your past and want to apply it to a more advanced degree. My next point, these degrees or credentials must have real value. And this means a return on investment, and that results in higher wages, of course, a secure, stable job, and instill confidence and satisfaction. So to me, and with most of you all, when you attend college, you do so because there is a sense of satisfaction there, I would hope. And that gives you confidence that by doing this, I'm investing in myself, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a job. And I'm going to get a job that I enjoy, and I'm going to be paid well, and I can have a nice, enjoyable life, and I can support my family. So that is something we've always felt, but this is going to become even stronger. And we're going to start mentioning the idea of pathways here in just a second. So we talked about what are we seeing. So next, I'm looking at the how. How will we see a redefinition of higher education? And again, I'm just one person's opinion, and there are so many more that you will hear as time moves on. So because there's so much to consider for redefining or reforming education, I've looked at my own experience, and I've just pulled out some areas where I think we just really need to prepare for as we move into the future. And there will be different versions of the items that I'm sharing here. But one other resource for me, I'll go ahead and mention as we move into this next session or slides. I have read in a Forbes article, and it's listed later here in a slide, but Nick Ladney on August 2025 in a Forbes article, he mentioned several different areas of redefining higher ed and really hits AI, artificial intelligence impact. So just stay tuned as we move through these next few slides. I will be referencing some of his data that he's pulled along with some others that I've mentioned from Lumina and my own experience and work in this area as well. So let's mention pathways again, and because that was part of the return on investment on the last slide of what is happening. And students are looking for ways to become more valuable in the workforce. So pathways from high school to terminal degrees and professional development. Going to college, I believe, is and should not be an isolated event, especially moving forward. It's not, I'm going to college for 4 years, I'm going to get a degree, and it's over. But it's just a step in career growth, and it will continue to evolve. And I use the word stacked because you can start as early as high school and gain just some basic skills. Maybe if you're interested in healthcare or even IT technology, you can go ahead and earn a basic certificate. Say in healthcare, you can become a nurse's aide and learn the basic skills of taking blood and checking blood pressure and everything. and you can get a job making minimum wage here in the U.S. And you can do it immediately once you turn 18. But how do you stack on that? Well, you can be working as a nurse's assistant, and then you can start taking courses at the local university for pre-nursing. So you can enter a nursing school and become a nurse. And you pass the test, you become licensed. Then you're a practicing nurse. Then you decide, oh, I want to go into leadership. So you want to get a Master of Science in Nursing. And then you can take those skills and some of your credits from your undergrad and apply it to a master's degree without having to take 3 or 4 years or quit your job in order to do it. You're able to work, make your money, plus invest and stack more credentials at the same time. And a lot of you are doing that already, and we're seeing that in businesses and in STEM areas and education with the different certificates and specialization areas. And that will continue to grow. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what I'm seeing. So you see, continuing on, while many corporations and businesses are now training internally and not requiring degrees, this is where universities will need to step in to those spaces and have an opportunity to provide the training for these workforce sectors. I mentioned welding as an example, and even IT specialists and corporations and businesses. They're not requiring a degree if you know how to do the work. So as a university leader, personally, I'm looking for ways to step into those spaces with these corporations. And I've mentioned that earlier too. The bridges between corporations and institutions, universities, is necessary. And that is how one of the first ways I'm discussing here, how we will see a redefinition of higher ed is the partnerships with our workforce and with our communities. I think that is so important as we move forward. Also, I've mentioned here the impact of artificial intelligence. And this, y'all have heard so much said about this topic. I am not an expert in AI. I don't claim to be, but I am a consumer, and I'm a learner, and I'm an educator. And as someone who's looking into the future, I know that artificial intelligence is something that we must embrace and use as a tool. I'll share a quick story. When I was in Kentucky, I was the provost and chief academic officer, and AI was just coming onto the scene. As I guess it's 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and faculty were really struggling with the idea of it. Already they felt like students were cheating and getting their information off the internet, and that wasn't original. There was no original thought. And then ChatGPT came out, and we were in a professional development with faculty, and we were just learning about it and how it's used. And we actually had some faculty members who were emotionally upset about just thinking about artificial intelligence, and afraid they were going to lose their job, and it's taken over. And this was a reaction based in ignorance, actually, because it was just the fear of the unknown. And that was okay at the time. But I do remember having discussions with faculty and other leaders that, this is something we don't need to fight. It's something we can't just hide or ignore. It is something of the future. And I've always felt that way. And I've worked with some really innovative colleagues who've had similar thoughts as well. But AI and I'm looking at the next bullet under AI impact. AI in the form of a fully interactive avatar professor type. These are interesting things that I'm wanting to share that I think will be taking place. But let me go back up. I jumped ahead. AI becomes a tool for faculty to use in order to teach more effectively and more meaningfully, and to prepare for a changing role of faculty that provides more personalized experiences while still inspiring and guiding students. So, number one, AI will actually create a greater reason to focus on relationships. And this is what many private universities, this is where many private universities will shine. And I really use this to inspire faculty, because AI is this tool that's just going to take content learning to a higher level. But faculty are necessary because they're going to be working more closely with students on how to use the content that they're learning more effectively and more efficiently. And we'll dig into this a little more here in a second. And then the second, I apologize if we're not being able to see this clearly at the bottom. Let me see. Here we go. AI will be seen in the form of a fully interactive avatar-like professor, and will equal and exceed the best versions of the best professors at any university. And I took this again from that Forbes article I mentioned earlier. But just think of the best professor at any university as being responsive, responsible, available day and night, 24/7, informed, with staggering amounts of knowledge, and demonstrating pedagogical approaches that match the personalized needs of the students. Just, consider that. We've all tried to explain the perfect faculty member. So if you think of this avatar-like version of a professor with AI capabilities, it's equally fearful and exciting at the same time. And are faculty jobs at stake? Well, I can assure you that the role of the faculty member, they are sure to change. Looking at a need for a new style of teaching, from teaching to more of a mentoring style. And their job will be to provide community building among groups of students. In this redefined role, professors will serve as subject matter experts and ensure that the AI professor's responses are sound and don't go off the rails. So I'm not predicting that faculty, the human presence of a faculty, is going to go away. That would really take away the need for a university. Everyone would, the university would just be fully online and at home. But I really think the key to the best education, and we can relate this to engineering and technology easily here in a second, but is having the human connection using the artificial intelligence tool is the best of both worlds, really. But yes, faculty are going to need to really think about their role differently. And I see lots of change, professional development, especially really kicking into high gear in these next few years, because I do think that those students in the high schools are going to start getting more exposure to this type of technology, and the government's going to start putting up more funding to prepare our students for more technology. And if our universities, especially our privately funded universities such as Wayland, where I work, it's just so important that we are ready for that change, because if not, we'll have students coming to us who know more than we do, especially in the world of technology and how it's being used. All right, I'm going to move on. So I'm continuing my discussion on AI impact, and I have 4 different topics here that I think are going to play a role, at least initially, in what the students will be assessed on and how, and just some other related topics that I want to touch on. First, the valid and reliable assessment of students. This is an area in my PhD work in teacher quality at the University of Kentucky. I spent a lot of time on creating instruments to measure what is quality teaching. And these measurements had to be valid and reliable assessments, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but just think of an example when you are looking at these types of assessment, and I'll talk more about this negotiation skill sample here in a second, but the current approach to testing in higher education, and oftentimes it's a multiple choice test, writing essays, group projects, or in-class presentation. And at best, these are just a proxy for learning. It's like an expectation. It's just what you have to do to show that you've learned something. And I call that old school. Some professors, they'll give up. And I believe oftentimes when students aren't responding to these types of assessments in like essay writing and multiple choice, it leads to grade inflation, because they just tend to lower the standard for students, which is a terrible trend that we're seeing. And while others have used protective systems of maybe their tenure to resist change, and we're talking about faculty, to their teaching performance. So in higher ed, again, I don't know in your country what you're seeing, but you often see institutions, especially the public universities, with a tenure system, and the faculty are protected, and they may use that protection to say, I'm not changing. I'm not going to implement AI technology and such. But going forward, we will witness professors and industry experts and curriculum experts determining what is assessed. Like, what are the content and skills? And AI will be able to judge. This is the exciting part for assessment. AI will be able to judge with vastly more objectivity the student's ability to demonstrate competence, including skills sought in industry. For example, and here's looking at negotiation skills. Here's an example. Presently, professors can lecture on what is involved in effective negotiation skills. And this could be in business world, any type of area of profession. You're negotiating a deal, for example. But AI can objectively assess a student's ability to demonstrate effective negotiation skills by using different types of AI negotiators. And how fun is that? So if you're wanting your students to learn in business negotiation, contract negotiations, whatever the topic, and you can put them in contact with or interacting with an AI system that they are having to interact with all the different types of negotiations and negotiators that they may come in contact with. And then the professor can observe and assess and see where the student's skills lie, and then give appropriate feedback. And so a student can immediately know, well, this is my growth area. This is my weakness. I really struggled negotiating with this type of person or this type of deal. I need to go back, and that's where I need to concentrate my efforts. So yeah, insert any scenario in any profession. I think this is exciting stuff. As a teacher preparer, I could see students in the classroom say they're learning how to teach computer science in high school, or they're even at the college level, and they're wanting to learn how to teach skills and technology. And so they can have these different types of students that they're faced with in either virtual reality as an AI type of experience, and they're practicing teaching and responding to all these different scenarios. Again, I just think it's very exciting. All right, personalized education experience, and this is related to what I just talked about. If you're assessing based on allowing students to have different experiences, this is where the personalization piece really comes in play. So many students do not complete their studies because student learning approaches and needs are not well matched with the abilities of the universities. We often see this with our English as a second language students, for example. The AI will provide an approach to self-paced learning that brings students along based on their learning needs, which means that students will have to demonstrate competence in academic and professional areas before proceeding. Rigorous standards and expectations can then be applied more fairly. And it's not about, if you look at what's fair and what's equitable, it's fair is, giving a student what they need to succeed. It's not giving everybody the same thing. And so through this approach, it's a much better experience for students because they're being met where they are as far as their abilities. And AI helps you determine that and can even do just some self creation of what their educational experience will look like. This in turn results in students staying in school and actually finishing and graduating, which is the goal for all of our students in higher ed. Rigorous standards and expectations can be applied fairly, as I said, and employers will have more accurate approximations of student skill levels when they graduate. Now, this is very revealing. They graduate, and we can have all these wonderful, rich reports and data on skill sets of all the students that future employers can look at, which person really excels in this particular area. And so I'm going to hire this person. And they may even be looking for someone who is a better manager more so than content. And those skills they rise through their assessment, and it really helps employers make better decisions about who they are employing and if they're the best fit. So again, very interesting. Moving on to affordability and subtraction of experiences. So in reforming education, part of that work is about being able to sustain. And in any institution, anywhere in the world, you have to be able to afford to be in existence, and your sustainability financially is so important. And this is a way, and this I think is part of the fear. Fear is when you see subtraction of expenses. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get rid of your human capital, but it can, I think, save in the long run, which we're already seeing that in a lot of our manufacturing and other areas in the U.S. But a comprehensive AI approach to higher education holds the promise of real affordability, actually. Although online education did expand access, the cost of education is still out of reach for many. and as many have personally experienced, the online approach was and is, it's just largely similar to what is done in person, but just on a screen. So any cost savings were largely accomplished by decreased personalization, but an AI integrated approach could prompt increased expectations and outcomes for faculty. And this is where the question remains with some faculty who may decide, I'm just retiring, I don't want to do this. But it's going to facilitate faculty to probably teach more courses per year. Right now, a lot of faculty, they'll just teach 4 classes. They have that full-time equivalent. But with AI, you could teach one professor could maybe teach 10 courses per year rather than 4, and not have the need for so many faculty. It's not necessarily terminating current faculty, but moving forward, not having to hire as many. And, for some, I guess that's okay, but it's also a fear. That more effective academic support services are just available, more readily available. Look at AI tutors. Could evolve into, we could have neighborhood campuses that are small, and that further increases access and it lowers cost. Right now we have the big model of everyone coming to campus. Texas Tech down the road in Lubbock, their enrollment is 42,000 this year. Now, granted, some are online, but we have thousands and thousands of students who move to Lubbock and have to uproot and just change their life and leave their families. With AI, I see, envision in the future, learning centers and just support centers where students can go when they need extra help or need to use technology, and it's closer to home, but it's not a big campus and it's not full of classrooms. You just have those experts in whatever classes, those faculty who are available. So basically what I'm saying is the addition of AI should lead to a subtraction of expenses as we move into the future. All right, so finally looking at equity and access. I've already mentioned how fairness is not giving everyone the same thing, but giving them what they need. But no reform is complete without addressing equity. So for the U.S. to remain a leader, we must ensure that students in every community, rural or urban, affluent or underserved, have access to quality STEM resources, mentorship, and opportunities. Diversity in education fuels diversity and innovation. There's no doubt about that. So there was a question at the beginning regarding how education reform, or how will education reform shape engineers of tomorrow? And you look at, from my perspective, of U.S. reform and global engagement working together, I think in the area of engineering, again, we will see engineering in their areas of expertise. I think there's some redefining there. The needs and how stacked of an education will an engineer need to be successful in the area of technology, and even in AI and data science and all the different areas. They're starting to teach at younger ages, and so by the time many are 18 or 19 years old, they're already capable of doing jobs that in the past others needed a 4-year degree to do, because they're focused on the skill more than they are the educational experience. And I think that's for the just the entry-level type of engineering work that is done. My husband, for example, is in electrical engineering and a master electrician. He has an associate's degree in electrical engineering, and he has no problem finding work. Now, should he want to go into leadership and management, a graduate degree in engineering is something he would need to pursue. But as many, and just as he, why should he when he's making six figures without the graduate degree? So I'm curious to see, and I don't have a crystal ball, but in these technical and engineering fields of the future and how education is going to change is, what will the need be? And so I think the conversations need to continue, and we need to prepare for that. That's I guess the scary part is the unknown. But it seems like in a week, things change so quickly. And in a week, they can just as quickly change back to the way they were. That's some of the experiences we're having here in the U.S. in our culturally and in our workforce and politically. It's just part of life now. Is just quick, the fast changes that are occurring. But I think the innovation piece with universities, if we continue to change with the technological finds and discoveries and creativity and innovations that are happening, those requirements for education and engineering aren't going to go away. They are just going to basically change. And I don't know it's necessarily for the negative, but for the positive. All right, I'm going to start to wrap this up with my final thoughts. Partnerships and consortiums or programs and courses and faculty sharing. This is an area that I'm strongly looking at right now at Wayland. We're wanting to offer more undergraduate type offerings in STEM, in particular engineering, and our partnerships with schools like Texas Tech and Texas A&M. And a really smart way to do that is to be part of a consortium where we share classes and faculty online, and the transcript sharing and such just happens seamlessly, and it's very cost effective. So in our global relationship efforts and moving forward, and how can U.S. reform work globally, I really feel like these consortiums and partnerships is part of that. We have 2+2 opportunities and such with other schools, but this, especially in the U.S., is something that I think you'll see more schools doing, even merging together to work on some of these more innovative programs. And I think all in all, the IA-generated higher education platform has the potential to hold much promise. Of course, the potential has already been met with the backlash, as I mentioned. Some attempting to limit the use of AI because of fear, assuming the current educational model should go unchallenged, unchanged, rather than covering one's ears to what's happening. The key will be to limit the potentially ineffective aspects of AI by opening up the higher education enterprise, such as open source the educational approach to ensure adequate critique and access for all students. And if done well, AI, artificial intelligence, can definitely revolutionize higher education for the better. So the U.S., and wrapping this up, concluding, the U.S. must transform its educational system into one that is adaptive, inclusive, and globally engaged. If we rise to the challenge, we will not only prepare our students to succeed in the future, we will empower them to shape it. I like this final sentence at the bottom. Engineering the future demands more than new tools. It demands new thinking. All right. Getting close to the end of my time, so thank you for those who are here, who stuck with me and listened to my presentation. I'd like to thank the Conclave and Stanley University for inviting me. I look forward to future collaborations with them and continuing with other schools in India and around the world. If anyone has a question, we do have a few minutes. I'm open to any questions or comments before we leave the session. Questions?
You are now unmuted.
Okay, that's a great question. I don't think it's going to be your typical classroom with rows of chairs and tables and chairs with people just sitting around and listening to a professor standing at the front of the room. I think that's going to be, that will go away. I mean, I think lectures will happen some, but the classroom of the future will be technology based. It's going to be, working in groups for problem solving, think tanks and incubator type cultures where students come together. But the professor, as I mentioned, will guide groups to think innovatively and help individuals work at their own pace, but not necessarily, like I said, sitting in rows in a classroom in chairs and just listening quietly. And again, I think that's a great place for education to be, with the faculty being someone who is mentoring and establishing the learning environment and using tools such as AI to guide the content for each student or for whatever group goal that they have. That's one scenario, but good question.
You are now unmuted.
Well,
you are now muted.
The fact that students think they can learn just as well at home, I think is your question. Then should we do something about that? I think it depends on the learning. There was a time in my life, in my profession, that I did not approve of online learning, especially for younger students. I think as an adult learner, I think adult learners can learn at home, but others can't. Some, they are able to, others are not. And I think it comes to the point where we must have options, and we do. But like I said, a typical online experience at home for an entire degree is not, they try to just replicate what's happening in a regular classroom. It's not an enriching, really high faceted learning experience that our newest technology can provide. So I think relationships are required for really true, rich learning. And that would come from a really strong faculty member who can help guide a student, especially where I come from in a private, we are a Christian university. So relationships are important, and we want to provide support, because in order to learn well, students they got to feel safe, and they have to feel like they're protected, and they are encouraged, and they have hope. So I think all of those things are very important to learning, and many students will never get that at home. So, yes, I believe that being around others to learn is very important.
You are now unmuted.
Yes, thank you.
You are now muted. You are now unmuted.
We will have our next keynote at 7:30 p.m. The YouTube live link has been shared. Please join shortly before the session.
You are now muted.